Greetings everyone, Brad here with Mild Mannered EDC. Really hope you're doing well out there. So today we're going to take a look at a Pena X series knife. These are knives inspired by his Enrique Pena's custom designs that then get put into a production format and are produced actually through Riyadh Knives over there in China. So very, very interesting knives. They always sell out incredibly fast, this sort of series of compact front flippers as he has them. So anyways, really do appreciate this knife coming my way. And while we're talking about that, this actually comes to me by my buddy James on Instagram. He's Rogue Carry. Go check him out. Really, really cool guy. Super patient with me. Just a very, very cool man, and has some awesome gear and a great aesthetic. And if you're like me and you're over on the Instagrams, go check him out. He's really cool, and I wouldn't have had a chance to look at this particular knife without him. So I really appreciate it. He's actually based out of the UK, and so this kind of was able to come my way before it heads back to him. But it was really great of him, really generous of him, and I really do appreciate it. So yeah, go check him out, Rogue Carry. Now, thinking about it, actually, these Pena knives, I think I've only had one more on the channel, and that was the Lanny and the X series rather, and that came to me from Al over at Al's EDC, also in the UK.
No, actually, I'm English.
So I really do appreciate the folks over in the UK taking care of me and my needs to see these Pena knives. I wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So anyways, thanks very much. All right, now before we get stuck in, we're going to do a few specs. We'll do a couple of size comparisons, and then we'll get underway with our classic mild-mannered review, shall we? All right, so this Pena Raptor, and as you've noted, is the blacked out variant. So pretty cool. In fact, I haven't seen another review up of this particular variant yet, so I think that's pretty neat. We'll talk about that a bit more as we go through. All right, let's look at some specs. We have a blade length on this Raptor of 2.87, a blade thickness of, and that's here where it's kind of at its thickest, of 0.12. We've got a handle length when it's closed up here of 3.75, and a handle thickness, it's a little bit chubby, a little bit of a chubby bunny here, right at 0.53. And we'll talk about that a little bit in carry, but there you go. So then overall, when it's opened up tip to tail, you've got a 6.625-inch knife weighing in at a grand 2.36 ounces. So light, compact, relatively easy to carry. Definitely the theme with these Pena front flippers. So there you go. All right, how about a couple size comparisons just real quick? What have I got on the table here? All right, how about a Spyderco Sage 5 and a mild-mannered classic Victorinox. So there you go. As you can see, definitely on the smaller end of knives, very much in the wheelhouse kind of here of the Victorinox, but anyways, I think that's sufficient for some size comparisons. So let's go ahead and get into that classic mild-mannered review. And when we do that, we'll talk about the blade, we'll talk about the action, we'll talk about scales and hardware, and then we'll finish off with ergos and carry. So blade, yeah, look at this blade. That is a sharp, angular design if I've ever seen one, right? Its namesake is the Raptor, and this definitely comes across like some sort of, sharp, bird-like beak or talon or something like that. I don't know. Very cool though. Some like I said, some really interesting angular designs. In fact, you could have given this kind of a sci-fi name, and I would have also thought that was cool, because this has got a very, I don't know, sort of Cardassian-esque kind of look to it. Just giving a hint there of my sci-fi of choice being Star Trek.
That is true.
So anyways, I digress, I guess, in the words of Nick Shabazz. All right, so what do we have on this knife? We've got a M390 blade here, as you can see. Very, very nice. It's Warrenclyffe, as we've just kind of been pseudo-discussing. Beautiful sharpening choil in there. It is a hollow grind, which I really do particularly appreciate. I love a hollow grind. They come down to an exceptionally thin edge, and it just, yeah, it's just something about hollow grinds. I wish they were on more knives. I love a good tall flat grind as well, but Yeah, something really nice about that sort of hollow grind, especially on a knife that's as that doesn't have much width in terms of, or tallness rather, in terms of the blade. That hollow grind really gets you to that keen edge, whereas a flat grind might not be able to do it as well. Or perhaps as easily, let me put it that way. So yeah, very, very nice blade. Really enjoy the swedge. You've got a little tiny bit of jimping here on the spine. We'll talk about that a little more in action, but yeah, that's kind of what we're sitting here with the blade. Very nice, great cutter. It's not my knife, so I didn't do a ton of cutting with it, but yeah, there you go. And we will talk about that blacked out blade. Well, let's just do that now, actually, before we go into action. So the blacked out, maybe you like that, maybe you don't. I think part of my hesitation with that is you do show marks earlier, right? It shows wear a bit more. So if this is a piece you actually are looking to use, you know, something to think about in terms of resale or whatever else, or even just in the aesthetic. So bothersome. I'm kind of, you know, neither here nor there on it, but just something to always be thinking about. So, all right. Now let's get into action. Interesting knife. In this of the Penas that I've handled that have been front flippers, this one's a little bit different, in particular because of this flipping tab that's up here. Most of the Penas seem to have this sort of curved, integrated kind of flipper actuator that gives you kind of a, you know, it's a more clean sort of look, I guess is what I would say. It's much more integrated. You don't see it, and it's a great action. You know, there's no issue with that at all in the other models, and there's definitely no issue with that here. What I will say is, while you are sacrificing a little bit of, you know, aesthetic, I guess, with this flipper tab sort of sticking out a bit more, you do get a couple things though. You get a very definitive ability to do the classic front flipper thumb roll there, but you also get to do this finger flick, which is actually my preferred way to open a knife of this size if it's a front flipper, and they don't always make that very easy. This one is fantastic for that. So, you know, you may not like how this sticks out a little bit, but for me, that's definitely worth it to have that ease. In fact, you'll notice as we go through this review that that's probably how I'm going to open it. 9 times out of 10. It is my preference, this little ability to sort of reach around.
Oh, my.
Yeah. Anyways, it's a great, and you know, by doing that also, you sort of, it's less of a chance you're going to put any pressure on this bolster. I mean, yeah, it opens both ways excellently, no problem there. And speaking of that, you know, you've got a really, really well dialed in detent for front flipping or reach around flipping. So, you know, no problems there. Cage ceramic ball bearings, everything you'd kind of come to expect from Riot made knives, right? And for those of you that aren't familiar with Riot, just real quickly, you know, Riot is one of the best production manufacturers, production knife manufacturers out there at the moment, not just in China, but just kind of globally, I think, at this point. And so if you're kind of new to the knife world or just kind of getting in, you know, or haven't heard of them, that's kind of where they are. So a lot of there aren't going to be a lot of fit and finish foibles on this knife to talk about, honestly. They're all made really, really well, and this one is no exception. So anyways, okay. All right, now, action-wise, we've got, as I mentioned, a bolster lock here. You know, the lockup isn't huge. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. Lockup's not huge, but it's totally sturdy. I obviously didn't do any spine whacking or anything with it, but you know, there's no blade play, no blade rock, anything like that. And I imagine over time that you might get a little bit more lockup there, but it is a bit on the early side, so something to think about. But again, this is not a very big knife, and you're not going to be doing a lot of hard use with this, I would imagine. So, you know, I think it's probably perfectly fine. So there you go. As I mentioned, no blade play, no blade rock. It's, you know, came centered, remains centered. Yeah, kind of nothing not to like about this action. Pretty easy access as well to the bolster lock. You know, again, this sort of template has been used by Mr. Pena quite a bit. So, you know, they've got it pretty refined here. It's pretty good, decent access to the bolster lock without, you know, having to jam your thumb in there or anything like that. So, all right, so that's what we've got with action. Let's talk a little bit about scales and hardware. And I did mention during the discussion around blade that this is the blacked out version. So you have this coating, which is a little bit tumbly. And you've got here these titanium bolsters, titanium liners, etc. Those have also been tumbled a bit, blacked out and tumbled, which I think is kind of a nice effect. And it probably actually helps with wear a little bit, to be honest. So there you go. You've got that. Now you also have really nice T10 hardware on this. So, you know, whether it's in the, and I'm sorry, it does have a over travel stop and lock bar insert. I should have mentioned that in action. I apologize. But again, these are so standard in some ways these days. So anyways, T10, which is nice. One of these screws actually did come. So this came straight from the retail location to me before it needs to head back to my buddy over at Rogue Carry, but it was loose. I saw that it was standing up, and so I got my Torx, and I was like, "Oh, these are T10. That's really cool." On a nice knife this size, to have those T10s, I think is a really, really nice touch, and sort of across the board. So it's one tool to do it all, whether you're taking the clip off or tightening the pivot, whatever you might be doing. I think that's great. All right. Oops, bumped the camera there. Sorry. You also have some blacked out micarta, very, very nice micarta, very smooth, which I'm sure over time will just get better and better. And in fact, almost has sort of a snakeskin look to it. If you kind of look there closely, yeah, it's kind of cool. Definitely cool. So, I think this is an interesting, titanium pocket clip, titanium backspacer. It's an interesting, I haven't seen a lot of these sort of blacked out versions of these Pena knives, and this is kind of cool. So I think they did a nice job with the sort of scales and hardware here. All right, let's talk about Ergos and Carry for a second. So Ergos, the Ergos are fine on the, ooh, look at that, I failed it. Ergos are fine in terms of, it's a small knife. Like I said, I don't expect you to be tearing apart a car with it or something like that. So the Ergos are fine. A couple of notes. This sort of sway back kind of thing here that's got going on with the handle. This comes up a little bit. It does hit you a little bit in the palm. And so, it's not uncomfortable. It doesn't hurt, but you definitely are sort of aware that that's the bottom of the knife, right? You can feel that kind of in this fatty palm part of your hand right there. So just something to think about. The other thing is there's really not a lot here to hold your hand in place. This jimping is very, very minimal. There's none down here. If you're in a slippery environment, a wet environment, whatever, you need to be careful. You'll come slipping onto this razor sharp blade very, very easily. So something to think about in terms of, again, is this maybe the best knife to be using in whatever conditions? I don't know. But it is it's very streamlined. It's very smooth. There's no transitions, all that kind of stuff. So there's nothing you're going to be really, gripping onto a little bit. I guess maybe this does help with that a little bit because it is sort of anchoring it a bit into the fatty part of your palm there. But yeah, I don't know. Just something to think about and be mindful of. It's not necessarily a critique, but it is a observation. All right. Now, Carry, I do have a little bit of a critique here with the Carry, and this, it's really on all these kind of knives. I don't like that it's not a deep carry pocket clip, and I don't like that it's kind of down in no man's land a little bit. They could have at least moved this up, I think, a little bit further up, and I think that would have not only maybe looked a little nicer, but also, I think, give it a little more depth in the pocket. Now, I get it. This is a small knife. When it's in your pocket, you want to have the ability to perhaps grab a little bit if it come out. But part of the reason I would buy a knife like this or, own a small knife is because I want that deep carry. I want the discretion that comes with that, right? That I can just sort of tuck it away in my pocket or my suit jacket or whatever, and you don't know it's there. And so by not really having that deep carry pocket clip, I think that's a little bit of a turnoff for me. It's by no means a functional problem with the knife at all. It's purely a preference there. And if you don't care, you don't care. And if you do care, you do care, whatever. But I'm just sharing that here from my perspective because, well, this is my channel. So, so that's what we've got going on here. With the Carry a little bit. And as I did mention, it is a little on the thicker side too. So, anyway, well, I'll leave it at that. It carries just fine. It's got pretty good spring tension there with the clip, but it does have a couple pieces there that are probably not some of my favorites in terms of, and this really, again, isn't specific just to this Raptor. I think it's these Penas in general. That's just my preference. It doesn't make them bad knives, and I can definitely see why they're so popular, and I love the flipper action on this knife. And for $298 or, $290, whatever it was, I think you're getting a lot of really well-made knife here from a fantastic designer. Hard to argue with. Very, very cool. Fit and finish. The materials are excellent. Action is excellent. Design is excellent. Has a few little things for me personally that I'm not a huge fan of, but again, not my knife. And those I think are very, very much, subjective. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope it's helped you out a little bit. Again, thank you to James over at Rogue Carry for letting me take a look at this and letting me hold on to it a little longer than he probably wanted. I know he's chomping at the bit to get this back in his collection. So anyways, most importantly, please stay safe out there. Be mild-mannered to one another, especially now. And all the best.